The Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Investment will come to order. I want to welcome everyone here this morning. I note that a quorum is present and we are able to move on. I also want to note for the subcommittee that Ms. Susan Wild of Pennsylvania, Ms. Lucy McBath of Georgia, and Ms. Johanna Hayes of Connecticut are permitted to participate in today's hearing with the understanding that their questions will come only after members on the subcommittee from both sides of the aisle who are present have had an opportunity to question the witnesses. The Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Investment is meeting today in a legislative hearing to hear testimony on reauthorizing the National Apprenticeship Act, strengthening and growing apprenticeships for the 21st century. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7C, opening statements are limited to the chair and the ranking member, and this allows us to hear from our witnesses sooner and provides all members with adequate time to ask questions. I want to recognize myself now for the purpose of making an opening statement. I look around this room and I see that everyone here is deeply committed to the mission of giving everyone in this country a fair shot at achieving the American dream. While we might emphasize different means by which to reach this goal, the fact of the matter is that our best efforts moving forward will ultimately incorporate a lot more than one single answer or pathway. Many Americans believe that attending a traditional four-year college is critical to obtaining economic success. But this specific path of obtaining a higher education may not be the best fit for everyone. We are here today because we want to give that conversation a fresh look and acknowledge that we need to do a better job of ensuring that people, whether young students or mid-career workers, understand the many pathways they have to accessing the high-quality lifelong learning opportunities that apprenticeships provide. We've all heard the success stories, and I think you're going to tell us some today, of people participating in registered apprenticeship programs. And I have been most impressed by the people I've spoken to who have started as an apprenticeship and then became the CEO of the company that they apprenticed for. These programs combine business needs with quality training standards and have a long track record of success. First enacted in 1937, the National Apprenticeship Act has provided and continues to provide hundreds of thousands of workers each year with access to paid, on-the-job learning opportunities. Registered apprenticeships are unquestionably the nation's most successful federally funded workforce development initiative, and we are here today to ensure the success is part of our national conversation about pathways to and continuing higher education. According to the Department of Labor, 94% of people who complete registered apprenticeships are employed upon completion, earning an average starting wage of above $70,000 annually. That probably surprises people, I think. As this committee has discussed in previous hearings, the success of these programs is not a mystery. Thanks to high-quality standards, close engagement with industry, and strong worker protections, registered apprenticeships provide apprenticeships with wages and benefits that increase as apprentices build skills and competencies, portable and stackable credentials that are nationally recognized and valued by employers, and advancement in a rewarding career path. Registered apprenticeships are also important to our nation's employers. By offering successful apprenticeship opportunities, employers build a talent pipeline of dedicated workers who are more likely to remain at their jobs for long periods of time. For every dollar that employers invest in apprenticeships, they receive $1.47 in increased productivity, reduced waste, and greater innovation. In response to the rising demand for registered apprenticeships, federal, state, and private initiatives have created hundreds of thousands of new apprenticeship positions over the last several years. Today, registered apprenticeships administered by the DOL and the state apprenticeship agencies, or SAAs, can be found in over 1,200 occupations, from traditional construction and military occupations to the non-traditional occupations such as technology, finance, and healthcare careers. But we know this, there is significant room for growth. Apprenticeships currently account for just 0.3% of the overall workforce. Say that again, 0.3%. Promoting and expanding apprenticeship opportunities is one of the most effective policy solutions to give hardworking people a clear path to financial security for themselves and their families, and can serve as a jumpstart for people on their career journeys. To help serve as a springboard for this conversation, I introduced a discussion draft of the National Apprenticeship Act of 2020, a proposed reauthorization of the National Apprenticeship Act that will empower more workers and employers to participate in our national apprenticeship system. And this proposal rests on three key pillars. First, it makes historic investments in apprenticeships by authorizing $400 million in federal grants, increasing by $100 million annually. Two, create and expand registered apprenticeships, youth apprenticeships, those for young people still in school, and pre-apprenticeships, including in non-traditional occupations. Encourage opportunities for individuals who face barriers to employment. Support national and local intermediaries who play a pivotal role in expanding apprenticeships, and better align secondary and post-secondary education programs with apprenticeship programs. According to our estimates, these steps will create over 1 million apprenticeship opportunities over the next 5 years. And second, the proposal authorizes a dedicated annual funding stream for states, which play a critical role in expanding apprenticeship opportunities. How do we achieve that? Through a new formula fund for state apprenticeship agencies that will provide consistent and reliable funding for apprenticeship programs each year. It also means ensuring that states can receive dedicated annual funding while also applying for grants to expand apprenticeship opportunities. And third, the proposal reflects the consistent feedback that we've heard from employers by streamlining the process for registering programs while maintaining registered apprenticeship programs of high-quality standards for apprenticeship agreements. This streamlining will not only make it easier for employers to create apprenticeship opportunities, but also make apprenticeship programs more consistent to ensure that all programs meet quality standards and uphold worker protections. Perceptions of apprenticeships vary greatly across the country, making it difficult for programs to expand and reach their full potential. The proposed reauthorization codifies clear definitions and standards for registered apprenticeships, youth apprenticeships, and pre-apprenticeships, so that we are all speaking in a common language about what we mean when we talk about the opportunities these programs provide. And as I have said before, the registered apprenticeship system has a proven potential to reach hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of American workers. And to that end, Committee Democrats and Republicans have been working to reauthorize the National Apprenticeship Act in a bipartisan manner, and I certainly hope that we'll continue these efforts. We put our differences aside, of course, to reach our common goal of helping more people succeed in today's economy through the registered apprenticeship system. Only with these clearly established programs will we ensure that families can sit down at the kitchen table, discuss their futures, and look to the registered apprenticeship system as one of many high-quality pathways to post-secondary education that lead to the middle class. The proposed reauthorization before us takes critical steps towards realizing that important goal, and we have an opportunity here to receive feedback from key stakeholders and make sure this proposal is as strong and effective as possible, and that's why you're here today. I look forward to working with all my colleagues to advance the National Apprenticeship Act of 2020, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Smucker, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're here today to discuss reform of the National Apprenticeship Act, which, of course, is an important tool in our efforts to promote and strengthen apprenticeships and strengthen opportunities for American workers so they're better prepared to compete in today's economy. And I'd like to thank the chair for what I know is her personal interest in ensuring that more apprenticeship programs and opportunities become available. I'd like to thank her for introducing this bill that would strengthen the act. And I'd like to thank her as well for working with this side of the aisle in coordinating and scheduling this hearing today. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and also looking forward to the continued discussion in regard to a bill. And I do know that there's a lot that we agree on and hope that we can work through any remaining differences and really advance a bill that is done in a bipartisan way and that will have the support of the administration and something that can be passed into law. So again, I'd like to first just thank you for your work on this very, very important topic. The more we combat the misconception that a baccalaureate degree is the only viable pathway to a good job, the more we can better prepare future workers for a successful life. For too long, there's been a stigma surrounding skills-based education, and today's hearing is an opportunity to highlight and recognize that the on-job learning programs are a proven method of setting students up for success. I was for years involved as a construction company owner and saw it there, but this can be expanded to so many other industries. As we all know, there's a growing interest today in apprenticeships and other earn and learn opportunities across the world, and for good reasons. Employers of all sizes are increasingly recognizing the critical role that apprenticeships play in the development of a qualified workforce. As our economy continues to thrive, and I'm proud of the strong economy that we have due to tax reform and deregulation efforts, it's created this serious skills gap that we now face. So currently today, there are more than 7 million jobs that remain unfilled. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the number of job openings in the U.S. exceeds the number of job seekers nationwide. This has increased the demand for skilled workers, yet a 2018 survey of U.S. employers showed that nearly half of all job creators struggle to hire employees with the right skills for the job. And for the 6th year running, skilled trade jobs continue to be the hardest position to fill all over the world. Apprenticeship programs offer one of the strongest solutions and pathways to filling these positions, closing this skills gap, and strengthening the American workforce. According to the Department of Labor, 94% of apprentices retain employment after completing an apprenticeship program, and the average starting salary after completion is $70,000. The Trump administration has long recognized the benefits and importance of these programs and acted on behalf of our nation's students and workers. In July of 2018, President Trump signed an executive order on workforce development in which companies around the country signed a pledge to expand apprenticeship opportunities and educate 3.8 million workers over the next 5 years. As I said, it's abundantly clear that apprenticeship programs are proven to be effective. We must continue our work to integrate the education community with the workforce so that classrooms and on-the-job development work hand in hand. We need to adapt in order to propel all students to success in a rapidly evolving economy. This committee has a responsibility to work towards solutions that will increase access to career-changing opportunities. Workforce programs like apprenticeships will aid in closing the skills gap by building talent pipelines and putting more Americans to work. So I'd like to thank our witnesses as well for your testimony today. Looking forward to having a discussion about how we can improve the recently released discussion draft to make the registered apprenticeship program system work better for students, for families, and for employers so that we can continue to promote apprenticeships to build our workforce and improve our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smucker. I want to thank our ranking member because we've had a really good, a strong working relationship, and I appreciate your insights into this issue. Thank you so much. Without objection, all other members who wish to insert written statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically in Microsoft Word format by 5 on Tuesday, March 17th. And we now turn to our witnesses, and I'm pleased to recognize my colleague, Representative Trone of Maryland, to briefly introduce his constituent who is appearing before us as a witness today.
Thank you, Chairwoman Davis and Ranking Member Smucker, for holding this important hearing. I'm very pleased to introduce a leader in my state of Maryland, Secretary Tiffany Robinson. Tiffany Robinson was appointed Secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor in July of 2019. In this role, she leads the department's work in protecting and empowering Marylanders by safeguarding workers, protecting consumers, and cultivating a thriving workforce that meets the demands of Maryland's dynamic economy and oversees Maryland's State Apprenticeship Agency. Prior to her appointment, Secretary Robinson served as Deputy Chief of Staff for Governor Larry Hogan. Before this, she was Assistant Secretary at the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development and Director of the Community Development Administration and the Housing Finance Agency for our state. Secretary Robinson is a graduate of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and the University of Baltimore School of Law. Thank you for being here. Secretary Robinson, I look forward to continuing to work with you to strengthen our registered apprenticeship programs in Maryland and throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm now pleased to recognize my colleague, Representative Grothman of Wisconsin, to briefly introduce his constituent who is appearing before us as a witness today. Mr. Grothman.
It's my honor to introduce Dr. Morna Foy as president of the Wisconsin Technical College System, one of the best in the country. We have 16 public two-year institutions serving more than 300,000 students enrolled in degree, diploma, and transfer programs, dual credit courses with high schools, basic adult education, and customized training in partnership with employers. The technical colleges, 5 of which I have in my district, are the primary provider of classroom instruction for Wisconsin's Registered Instruction Program, the first in the nation, which was created in 1911, the same year as the state's technical college system. Dr. Foy has been engaged in higher education policy and leadership for 30 years and believes strongly in the value of apprenticeship programs, which is why we have her today. We are very pleased to have her here to highlight Wisconsin's program and how we can improve apprenticeships at the federal level. Dr. Foy has an undergraduate degree from the University of Wisconsin, a master's degree from Indiana, and a doctorate at our joint alma mater, the University of Wisconsin. Thank you for being here, Dr. Foy.
Thank you. And I'll now introduce the remaining witnesses. Jace Noteboom is the Talent Director for the IBM Systems and Cognitive Enterprise Support Units of IBM. Whereas a member of the Human Resources Executive Team, she has global responsibility for the workforce skills, talent offerings, and employee experience, including creating and overseeing IBM's registered apprenticeship programs. And also Daniel Bustillo. Daniel Bustillo is the Executive Director of the Healthcare Career Advancement Program, or HCAP, a national organization of SEIU unions and healthcare employers who are participating in support of developing quality healthcare career education models, including registered apprenticeships for high-road jobs that increase equity in the healthcare workforce. Thank you, all of you, for being here. We appreciate that, and in some cases, we know that you've traveled a long distance to be here today. I just want to remind witnesses that we have read your written statements, and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D and committee practice, each of you is asked to limit your oral presentation to a 5-minute summary of your written statement. Before you begin, please remember to press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it will turn on and the members can hear you. And as you begin to speak, and the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, yellow, to signal that you have 1 minute remaining. And when the light turns red, your 5 minutes have expired, and we ask you to please wrap up. We will let the entire panel make their presentations before we move to member questions. When answering a question, please remember to again turn the microphone off. And I'll first recognize Secretary Tiffany Robinson, and then we'll just go right through the line. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Scott, Ranking Member Fox, Subcommittee Chair Davis, Subcommittee Ranking Member Smucker, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Tiffany Robinson. I'm Secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor under Governor Larry Hogan. I'm honored to be here today, and I thank you for this opportunity to discuss and share with you the successes and challenges of the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Program. Maryland has transformed the state's registered apprenticeship program into the premier workforce tool that it is today by developing best practices and strong partnerships with education and industry leaders, job seekers, and businesses. During the Hogan administration, Maryland has experienced tremendous growth with its number and diversity of apprenticeships. We went from 7,340 registered apprentices to 10,500 as of today, and from 125 program sponsors to over 164 sponsors. By the end of this year, we expect to set another record and surpass 11,000 apprentices in the state of Maryland. In terms of increased diversity, I don't mean a slight increase. This administration has seen a 70% increase in the number of female apprentices in Maryland, as well as a 40% increase in the number of minority apprentices. As you can see, our focus on growing diversity already aligns with the new goals of the draft Reauthorization Act. We're very proud of this growth, which is due to the rebranding of our registered apprenticeship program through a mass coordinated outreach campaign, the inclusion of non-traditional industries and competency-based instruction, and increased state incentives combined with US DOL apprenticeship expansion grants. One of the most significant changes that we have made in Maryland was to build on the growing realization that college is just not for everyone. It sounds simple, but we're actually changing the perception of apprenticeship by increasing our personal outreach to current and prospective stakeholders. For example, over the past 3 years, we have visited every single apprenticeship program in the state. This obviously helps to ensure compliance, but it also strengthens our relationship with our businesses and our sponsors. Believe it or not, when it's my team taking a tour, meeting apprentices, and providing technical assistance, Maryland businesses actually welcome a site visit from the government. We've also found that the perception is changing among the non-traditional industries who once believed the apprenticeship model could not work for them. Innovative, competency-based programs have resulted in over 60% of our new apprenticeship sponsors being in non-traditional fields such as healthcare, information technology and cybersecurity, transportation and logistics, advanced manufacturing, and hospitality. The Hogan administration has also more than doubled its funding for the apprenticeship programs, which has helped to lead to the state's 45% increase in the number of new apprentices. Maryland's program particularly benefited from the governor's More Jobs for Marylanders Act, which included a registered apprenticeship tax credit, allowing an employer a $1,000 tax credit per apprentice hired. This credit has received overwhelmingly positive feedback from businesses and is being considered currently for expansion this legislative session. While Maryland continues to grow and scale these programs, the primary challenge that we have faced is the lack of consistent and sustainable federal funding at the program level. So I was thrilled to see the inclusion of formula funding as well as continued federal grant options in the draft reauthorization language. The formula funding will enhance our state's ability to expand and integrate apprenticeship within the workforce system while growing our dedicated team. And it will finally allow states to fully incorporate pre- and youth apprenticeship into our programs through a dedicated funding stream. And while I'm happy to see the grant funding will still be available, I might add that it would be beneficial to states if the lifespan of those grants were increased to 4 years to coincide with the newly required state plan and data reporting requirements, especially considering that most apprenticeship programs are also 4 years. It's also my hope that the grant funding remains flexible, similar to the governor's set-aside WIOA funds. As you know, newly formed programs simply don't have the same foundation as unions and associations who have had decades to establish a generational presence. So a grant with more flexibility and a longer lifespan will help sustainably grow these new programs. We're very proud of the profound impact that the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Program has had on our business community, job seekers, and students in Maryland. Businesses across the country, as you mentioned, are facing a shortage of skilled workers. So I can't think of a better time to reauthorize the National Apprenticeship Act. On behalf of the Hogan administration, Maryland is thrilled to partner with you on this important endeavor, and we look forward to continuing our growth of the apprenticeship programs in years to come. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. Dr. Foy?
Chair Davis, Ranking Member Smucker, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the National Apprenticeship Act and the need to strengthen and grow apprenticeship. I'm Morna Foy, president of the Wisconsin Technical College System. I'm also a board member for Rebuilding America's Middle Class, or RAMSI, a nationwide coalition of community colleges seeking to ensure federal policy represents the needs of our students. I'd like to acknowledge Representative Grothman and his unwavering support for apprenticeship and for the Wisconsin Technical College System, but mostly for his consistent focus on connecting employers with educators. Wisconsin has a strong state-registered apprenticeship program administered by our Department of Workforce Development with more than 11,000 registered apprentices headed for careers as carpenters, medical assistants, IT software developers, and many others. Our 16 technical colleges provide the majority of the related classroom instruction for registered apprentices in our state, including 77 distinct apprenticeship programs, 11 of which are new since 2014. 5 more are under development and will be available this year. I have provided a handout with the complete list. Apprenticeship receives extensive support in Wisconsin. It has consistently enjoyed broad bipartisan support among policymakers, and perhaps more importantly, our employers support it as a vital talent development strategy. More recently, apprenticeship has proved invaluable in addressing demographic challenges, an aging workforce, and fewer high school graduates that Wisconsin has not experienced alone. Apprentices certainly benefit too. Those recently completing an apprenticeship for which a technical college provided the related instruction reported an annual median income of $80,000, more than twice Wisconsin's annual median income. I refer you to the annual report provided to members for additional apprenticeship outcome data. Wisconsin's technical colleges excel in aligning apprenticeship with formal education because we intentionally bring that perspective when designing and providing apprenticeship instruction. First, apprenticeship has strong K-12 connections in Wisconsin, where the department's youth apprenticeship program is open to high school students with related instruction provided by high school partners. Our technical colleges, through agreements with local school districts, award youth apprentices dual credit, college credit that also counts toward high school graduation. From 2015 to 2014, we awarded more than 5,100 college credits to about 1,300 youth apprentices in public and private high schools. At the post-secondary level, registered apprentices who complete the work and classroom requirements are awarded a nationally recognized apprenticeship completion certificate. That certificate is recognized as the first 39 credits of a 60-credit associate degree in technical studies, which can be completed by earning 21 general education credits, many offered online, and lead to transfer to four-year institutions in Wisconsin as an individual's career progresses. In that example, the degree was earned after completion of an apprenticeship. We've begun designing our newest apprenticeship programs with a degree embedded as part of the program, allowing individuals to earn a traditional degree in tandem with, rather than after, apprenticeship completion. This model shows particular promise for professions such as medical assistants, where national certification exams and accreditation bodies guide the design of program requirements. This model is strongly supported by industry partners who want employees with educational and career pathways beyond the completion of the apprenticeship itself. To encourage better alignment of apprenticeship and post-secondary attainment, it's my hope that reauthorization will acknowledge the role of community colleges in apprenticeship. First, a separate statutory formula program for states would better support the engagement of two-year colleges in the development and delivery of related apprenticeship instruction. Second, an interagency agreement established between the federal departments of labor and education would acknowledge that apprenticeship is more than just workforce development. Apprenticeship, as the Wisconsin model has shown, is a highly effective, cost-neutral path to post-secondary attainment. Finally, the state-registered apprenticeship program works well for Wisconsin and should be maintained. I really want to thank the committee for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing. I hope my perspective adds value to your discussions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Noble.
Chairwoman Davis, Ranking Member Smucker, distinguished members, I'm the Talent Director for IBM Systems, responsible for workforce skills and careers. Apprenticeships provide an additional pathway to compelling careers at IBM and other employers. Since the start of our apprenticeship program in 2017, IBM has hired 500 apprentices across roles ranging from mainframe systems administration to cybersecurity to data analytics. We've hired apprentices in 15 states, including California, Virginia, and North Carolina. Candidates for apprenticeships are drawn from a mix of backgrounds often passed over by the United States higher education system. IBM has registered more than 25 new competency-based roles in information technology with the U.S. Department of Labor and collaborated with other employers and associations to enable their efforts to bring more people into the workforce through this educational pathway. As Clayton Slaughter, an IBM mainframe apprentice from Texas, says, "When I was interviewing with my manager, she was happy to hear I had prior experience and technical aptitude, but what got me the job was my desire to be there. I would encourage any company, not just tech companies, to open apprenticeships to allow people the opportunity to shine because I know that there are many others who, like me, have the aptitude and skills, but not the access to higher education required at many companies." Unfortunately, the U.S. education system is not producing graduates with relevant technical and soft skills. Around 2/3 of the U.S. working-age population do not have a bachelor's degree, and most graduates are from a narrow band of the U.S. population. Often, higher education institutions simply do not offer programs in the most demanded skills. And even when higher education offers in-demand courses, obstacles interfere with progress to graduation. The GAO has found that students who transferred from 2004 to 2009 lost, on average, an estimated 43% of their credits. 43%. This obstacle to transfer of credits is particularly severe for technical courses. For example, there's no articulation agreement to allow transfer of credit for any of the San Diego City College courses in cybersecurity with San Diego State University. Their campuses may only be 8 miles apart, but academically, you can't get from SDCC to SDSU. IBM's New Collar approach focuses on skills first, not degrees earned, and emphasizes work-based learning and core skills like learning agility, teaming, and adaptability. The primary New Collar approaches are apprenticeships, skills first, and P-Tech, a career-oriented school model. IBM's apprenticeship is a competency-based program that pairs apprentices with comprehensive learning, focused hands-on application and demonstration of skills, and mentorship. Having a standardized apprenticeship model registered with the Department of Labor allows us to share our apprenticeship model more easily. For example, both the Consumer Technology Association companies and the California Division of Apprenticeship Standards are fast-tracking apprenticeships based on IBM's registered apprenticeship roles. Our skills-first strategy, rather than academic degree requirements, allows for the development of a more qualified and diverse workforce. Lifelong learning, upskilling, and reskilling are all elements for successful talent management. P-Tech schools allow students in grades 9 through 14 to earn both a high school diploma and an industry-recognized 2-year post-secondary degree at no cost while working with industry partners like IBM. Based on our experience with these 3 New Collar pathways, IBM urges the subcommittee to move forward on the following reforms to apprenticeship. First, complexity of implementation is a barrier for many companies wanting to leverage apprenticeship programs. Second, funding. Annually, the United States spends more than $1.1 trillion on formal and informal post-secondary workforce education and training, and the U.S. Department of Labor's appropriated funding level for apprenticeship programs in 2020 was less than $200 million. Third, IBM urges the House to remove obstacles in the Higher Education Act that could help prepare students for apprenticeship programs, including restrictions on short-term programs and federal work study. Finally, extend the P-Tech model to pre-apprenticeship as a proven pathway that could prepare students for a career on further education. Thank you, members of the committee. I look forward to your questions and working with the committee to modernize the apprenticeship program.
Thank you. Mr. Basile.
Chair Davis, Ranking Member Smucker, and members of the subcommittee, I'm pleased and grateful to have the opportunity to testify before you this morning. My name is Daniel Bustillo. I serve as Executive Director of the Healthcare Career Advancement Program, commonly known as HCAP. HCAP is a national labor management cooperation organization of SCI union locals and employers in healthcare that promotes innovation and quality in healthcare career education. These industry partnerships exist across 16 states plus Washington, D.C., training tens of thousands of healthcare workers a year. HCAP and industry partner organizations have long-standing track records of developing and implementing high-quality training programs for incumbent healthcare workers that support their career aspirations while simultaneously meeting employer workforce needs, a win for all. The success of these programs and the benefits to workers would not be possible without the investments made by unions and participating employers, which allow workers to have a direct voice in these programs and ownership over their own futures. This is all occurring in an industry undergoing continued occupational growth and delivery system transformation. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment of healthcare occupations is projected to increase by 14% through 2028. Moreover, of the 30 fastest growing occupations, 18 are in healthcare and related occupations. Other sector-wide factors are also accelerating the need for continued innovation in the creation and implementation of non-traditional high-quality training programs and rigorous workforce planning. This industry context mandates new ways of thinking. Despite the fact that the healthcare industry has a long history of work-based learning models, modern healthcare has not traditionally been an industry in which registered apprenticeships are used with any frequency. While HCAP and our affiliated partners administer many high-quality training and education programs, registered apprenticeships are the gold standard of workforce development strategies, such as that practiced by our colleagues in the trades. Thus, in 2016, HCAP created a national collaboration to build targeted workforce solutions through registered apprenticeship. Since September 2016, we have also been serving as a national industry intermediary contractor with the United States Department of Labor to support the development of registered apprenticeship in healthcare across the nation. Since launching our first cohort of apprentices in November 2016, HCAP has supported the registration of over 1,500 apprentices across 8 states with multiple employers encompassing large, small, and mid-sized firms. Of these apprentices, 82% are women, and a majority, 60%, are people of color. These registered apprenticeship programs are developed to industry specification with direct input from employers, unions, and workers to create competency-based programs. The move towards competency-based registered apprenticeship programs has been particularly valuable in the healthcare industry, where we have a large number of highly experienced incumbent workers seeking opportunities for career progression. As an intermediary organization and national contractor, HCAP leverages the direct support, participation, and expertise of our partners who play a key role in the inception, design, and implementation of programs to create sustainable registered apprenticeship infrastructure. We have developed positive working relationships with many state apprenticeship agencies and the Office of Apprenticeship at the national level. Even though nearly 80% of healthcare workers are women, we continue to strive to ensure accessibility for women and workers of color, and amongst other strategies, have created a variety of tools and resources on equal employment opportunity regulations. We have also begun work to make registered apprenticeship programs in healthcare more accessible to people with disabilities and youth. In short, registered apprenticeships continue to expand throughout the U.S. healthcare industry without sacrificing standards or quality, and have assisted to meet critical industry need. We are heartened by the continued interest in codifying and supporting the expansion of registered apprenticeship as a high-quality training mechanism that provides rigorous instruction, much-needed supportive services to apprentices, and good jobs to workers, while assisting employers with their workforce planning needs. Investments in high-quality registered apprenticeships are a critical step in addressing broader workforce challenges and provide workers and businesses with sustainable resources to prepare for the future. Based on our experience, we offer a few items for consideration. First, industry partnerships and intermediary organizations help expand the capacity of industry, educational providers, and human service organizations to meet worker need and employer demand. These partnerships are critical to expanding registered apprenticeship in our country and should be supported. Second, supportive services such as childcare, transportation, and housing assistance help ensure equity and apprentice success, which benefits workers and employers. Third, worksite changes and new technologies in the healthcare sector will mean workers will need more access to earn and learn and on-the-job learning opportunities like registered apprenticeship. And fourth, positive strides have already been made, but continued efforts to support transparency and efficiency in the registration process, along with more longitudinal data collection and analysis, would lead to greater uptake. We look forward to the future and the continued expansion of a high-quality registered apprenticeship system that supports innovation through an efficient registration process without sacrificing quality. This expansion of registered apprenticeship opportunities in healthcare and other non-traditional industries is an important objective and a true benefit to workers, communities, employers, and industries. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive remarks and for staying within the time limits. We appreciate that. It's now time under Committee Rule 8A to question witnesses under the 5-minute rule. I'm going to pass on that right now, as I understand the ranking member is, and so we'll go to the first member on our side, and we'll go back and forth throughout the morning. Mr. Courtney of Connecticut, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and again, to you and Mr. Smucker, congratulations on really what is an historic moment here in terms of amending and enhancing the Fitzgerald Act, which for all intents and purposes has not been touched for 83 years when it passed in 1937. I'm a bit of a Fitzgerald Act geek because Fitzgerald was William Fitzgerald, who represented Eastern Connecticut, my district, back in 1937. He was an amazing person. As we talk about non-traditional paths to employment, he never had a college degree. He actually was a foundry worker and an amazing person, obviously, because his leadership skills sort of stood out, and he, rose through the ranks where he worked. He became mayor of Norwich, Connecticut, was elected to Congress. This bill passed when he was a freshman. It was his first term in Congress in 1937 and signed into law by Franklin Roosevelt. After 2 terms, he left to go head up the War Industrial Board, which obviously was probably the biggest mobilization of a workforce in our country's history. And Connecticut, like all our states, did so much to make sure that we had the successful outcome. We're about to celebrate the 75th anniversary this summer. And again, the industrial base was as big a part of that story as almost any other aspect. And the Fitzgerald Act actually helped with that high-velocity worker training to make sure that the country could obviously meet the demand that existed there. So again, thank you for your passion and experience that all of you really demonstrated here this morning. And again, earlier we did have a kind of a subject matter hearing where we had witnesses from other countries that came in and testified from Switzerland, Germany, and Australia, which again, this is a global issue actually. And one exchange we had with the gentleman from Australia was talking about, because they have sort of a similar setup with the federal system of national, state, and obviously private sector, sort of economies, that, the key element that Mr. I've got his name here, Bradley testified to, was that it was so important to have a national standard so that you have portability as people move from one part of a country to another. And, Ms. Noteboom, you mentioned the fact that, in your sector, that is obviously something that is important as obviously you're a multi-site company all across the country, that somebody who's trained in California can go to work in New York, and maybe you could just sort of talk about that that was one aspect of the Fitzgerald Act that they got it right in terms of a national standard.
Yes, by registering apprenticeships with the U.S. Department of Labor, we create the best practices and toolkits and curriculums and competency-based programs that can not only be used by IBM, and we are using them, but shared with other employers, such as states, such as small and medium businesses. In the digital economy, there are so many critical needs for IT skills, and the transferability of credits in the educational system, as well as the recognition of standards across states with our government, is critical.
And Mr. Bustillo, you sort of have that similar sort of place in terms of dealing with multiple employers. And again, is that standard, again, something that people need to rely on?
Yes, I think in healthcare, a little bit different context in terms of the healthcare sector, just due to the fact that we have multiple occupations in healthcare, right? There are some of those occupations independent of registered apprenticeship, do not have national standards. So the registered apprenticeship process really brings a structure and framework to that is certainly helpful in doing so. And I think that we've been successful in using that as a mechanism to create those occupational frameworks and to assist with the portability across states, as you talked about.
Dr. Foy, I should point out, Wisconsin actually did have the first, legal apprenticeship program in the country back to 1911. But again, this bill, again, is talking about sort of stabilizing the horizon in terms of authorized funding for the programs. Again, just wonder if you could talk about how that gives employers more confidence in terms of participating in these programs if they know they're going to be around for a while.
Yes, sure, and thanks for the acknowledgement. It's something Wisconsin's very proud of. I think what's really important is that we understand that as we expand the disciplines and the industries in which apprenticeship is becoming a new delivery model, that's an expensive proposition, developing the curriculum for it, making sure that we have instructors available that have a skill set to do the instruction, and it's more difficult to plan for than a traditional academic program. We know the semester's coming up, we know what the enrollments are going to be. We might have a new employer decide at any time of the year that they would like to hire some apprentices and that they have an opportunity to do so. So having funds available for curriculum development, for instruction, I think, and sort of a backstop to what states should and do provide, is really important.
Thank you. The gentleman's time is up. You know, we may be a little more liberal when our witnesses are finishing, since there aren't as many members here today, but please, everyone can try and stay within the 5 minutes, but I just gave a few extra seconds, so thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Guthrie from Kentucky.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of us talked to, as my friend from Connecticut, Switzerland, we've kind of looked at their model. I believe their whole system is planned for 2/3 of their people to go through apprenticeships. And I remember Ms. Davis and I, the chair, talking, and my first thought was, wow, so there's 2/3 of people that are not encouraging to go to college to begin with. Then you look at, according to the census, 2/3 of Americans don't have bachelor's degrees. I think 30% is the #1 state, and that's Massachusetts. So it's not what are they doing to their citizens, what are they doing for? And so I think the question we have here, so the American people know, is really a bipartisan issue here. Everybody's working together. The question is just what is the federal role and what are the details and how much prescription versus flexibility, because we all want to work together to make this work and make it happen. Because you hear the same stories, you hear it everywhere you go. There's every employer in Kentucky that would hire somebody today, even if they're not advertising, if they found somebody with the right skills. And these people are not starting at $7.25 an hour. They are substantially higher than that. And in the late 90s, we changed our community college system, our community colleges are part of the University of Kentucky. We separated them out and created a separate system and combined community college and technical schools together. And I think that's turned out to be a great model. But at the beginning, all the tech schools want to be community colleges. So we call it the Kentucky Community College and Kentucky Community Technical College System, KCTCS. Dr. Fry, I think you're familiar with it. And I used to, in the General Assembly, say let's keep the T in KCTCS because everybody wanted to be a community college. But what's happened now is if you go to any community college or any tech school or KCTCS school, as we'll call them, the Chamber of Commerce is there, the employers are there, the workforce people, everybody seems to be working together now, and I think it's probably in some states I'd like to hear about Wisconsin. Well, the biggest issue is getting people to come to the programs. And you hear what we all say, that there are substantial abilities to increase your earning potential. Everybody's begging for skilled workers. There's a shortage of skilled workers, more jobs than people. But we're having trouble getting people to come to fill the seats of training. Now, there's some that are booked and lines to get in, but for the most part, and I don't know, Dr. Foy, what are the challenges have you had in your effort to work together with industry to get trainees and get people, education? I hate to say trainees, they get in trouble here because you educate people, you train animals. I've heard that before. So I'm gonna, just forget I said that. How do you get people into your education system and so they can earn a better living? We know who says that. Sorry, I apologize to my former community college president over here.
I'm very fortunate, actually, that in Wisconsin, the technical college system has a very old and strong relationship with our state employers. So we have involved them in all of our curriculum development, and we do that on a regular basis. They also sit on all of our governing boards.
But do you get people how do you get people to be educated? Or how do you get them?
Because it's a partnership that has to happen with employers and with educators. I think the days when it was all about higher ed, just trying to get students in our seats so that we could collect tuition revenue, is not how we operate. We are a partner with our state's employers to create their talent pipeline. And apprenticeship has become an increasingly valuable and valued tool in how employers get folks into their places of business. So we're the second step. They're using apprenticeship as a recruiting tool. They're posting salaries of apprentices. They're putting up data about contrasting how much debt does an apprentice completer have with an associate degree in many cases in our state versus a traditional associate degree student who just went to college and paid their own way. And the answer is, they have zero over here and they have something over there. They're using it as a retention tool. Wisconsin has a very, very competitive market in big industries, IT, agriculture, advanced manufacturing. So we get employees who want to come into a business, but then they are also going to get recruited and headhunted by the business down the street. Employers are using the fact that they offer apprentices, and they are making that investment in their employees as a retention tool now. And it is getting to be something where employees are actually asking about it when they go for a job interview. What do you do for me? If I come here, how are you going to demonstrate that you care about my career progression? So we're working with employers very hard to market it, to put out materials like the one I provided to the committee, and it's having a big impact, actually.
Thank you. I'm out of time, but I have unanimous consent to submit for the record Consumer Technology Association's why tech companies should offer apprenticeships.
Without objection, thank you. Unanimous
Thank you.
support.
Thank you for your answer.
And Mr. Levin, Michigan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. To start, I want to thank the witnesses. I appreciate your thoughtful comments and the bipartisan tenor of today's hearing. In fact, bipartisanship has been a core component of the committee's work on registered apprenticeships. We've had other bipartisan hearings leading up to today's legislative hearing. We've also had one of the best bipartisan committee member roundtable discussions that I've attended in my time in Congress. The room was packed, Republicans and Democrats were engaged, and there was a clear bipartisan commitment to an excitement about reauthorizing the National Apprenticeship Act and increasing access to registered apprenticeships. Chairwoman Davis, Ranking Member Smucker, as well as Chairman Scott and Dr. Fox and their staffs have upheld that bipartisan commitment. For months now, they've engaged in good faith negotiations. They've even agreed to delay today's legislative hearing an extra week to give more time to reach a bipartisan agreement. I would hope that given the Trump administration's stated interest in growing apprenticeships, it will embrace the opportunity to meaningfully scale up registered apprenticeship systems through this bill. The administration's support will continue to help negotiations and enable a bipartisan bill to move smoothly through the House of Representatives so that we can create opportunities for hundreds of thousands of people across the country. So I wanted to start on that bipartisan note and commitment to work with the administration. I want to talk about how to help people, poor people, people who've traditionally not had access to apprenticeships, get in the game. There was a United States Senator once from Illinois named Barack Obama who got into the safety loo bill that you could use 0.5% of your safety loo money to build the road construction workforce of the future, women, people of color, poor people. And for 4 years, I was Michigan's chief workforce officer, and I had a job similar to Ms. Robinson's. I ran all the job training and programs and that kind of thing in Michigan. And using what the senator got passed into law, we created pre-apprenticeship programs that were paid. The first was called RCAR, Road Construction Apprenticeship Readiness. And frankly, there's a lot of people who without childcare, without transportation, without being, earning something, they couldn't participate in the system, but they're not ready for the apprenticeship program unless they have a pre-apprenticeship opportunity. So, Mr. Bustillo, let me ask your thoughts about this. Basically, few people can afford the time or money to dedicate weeks or months to a pre-apprenticeship program without income to support themselves and their families. If we just have unpaid programs, it will exclude people with low incomes and result in a pool of apprentices that lacks racial and ethnic diversity. So how can reauthorizing the National Apprenticeship Act, which is what we're trying to do here, ensure that people of color and women and poor people can fully participate in pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship programs and that people receive adequate compensation?
So thank you for the question. And I think harkening back to my oral testimony, and this is expounded a bit further in my written testimony as well, I think clearly, I'm heartened to see it in the proposed legislation, so there's a focus on pre-apprenticeship, exactly what you're talking about as well. One of the things that we have seen quite clearly, and I'm going to broaden it out a little bit as well, because what you are talking about is absolutely correct. So you heard me focus on supportive services, and based on our experience, we have seen the critical nature of those services, whether it is for folks who are entering into a program, like a pre-apprenticeship program, but I think that actually also holds for folks who are incumbent workers and looking for a career progression as well. I'll give a very particular example from a state, and many states have different geographies, right? So there are states where the more rural areas of those states, there are no community or technical colleges within the neighboring towns that folks might live in. So I've seen this, and I've interacted with many healthcare workers around the country who have the desire and the ability to progress, either enter into the profession or progress, but the community college, where if you're a CNA trying to become an LPN, the community college is an hour away, right? An LPN program is a full-time program. So you need, in essence, to go to school full-time, then work 2 double shifts on the weekend in order to have some sort of salary or benefit to be able to support you and your family, and then have a car available to you to drive an hour away as well. So I say all this to say that what you're talking about, Representative Levin, is absolutely critical in terms of thinking about the supportive services. You heard me mention childcare, transportation, housing assistance. I think it's a little bit broader than that, though, as well. I think without those supportive services, and that's one of the things that really differentiates the registered apprenticeship process, the wraparound services, the earn and learn model, and the supportive services that are so critical to ensuring success, which leads to better outcomes not only for the apprentices, but for employers as well.
Thank you very much. The gentleman's time is up. Mr. Grothman of Wisconsin.
Yeah, Dr. Foy, first of all, thank you again for being here. We have, I think, top of the line in the country, but could you talk a little bit more about Wisconsin's system and why you feel it kind of stands out among other states?
I'd be happy to do that. I think there's a few things that Wisconsin's pretty fortunate because we've had a long history of connecting apprenticeship with academic programs. But that's one of the things that is different in Wisconsin is that relationship between the Department of Workforce Development and the technical college system is codified in statute. We know how to work together, and we do that very well. We also have a technical college system that our curriculum is developed, whether it's for apprenticeship programs or for academic programs, on a competency-based basis. So that means we build learning modules. We put all of our curriculum into a database, again, whether it's for apprenticeship programs or academic. And what that results in is it makes it very easy for us to crosswalk between those two kinds of delivery models and therefore combine credentials for students. We also have a very, very strong relationship with state employers. So that makes sure that our curriculum, again, whether it's for academic programs or for apprenticeship, is current. It is modified appropriately as the industry changes. And we have one other component that I think is, actually I know is quite unique in the country, which is that we have paid-related instruction. So that's really important, I think, for reaching those populations that maybe haven't been as big of participants in apprenticeship, and also incumbent workers who want to advance their skills. Because without paid-related instruction, they have to take essentially a pay cut in order to get the classroom instruction. And that makes a big difference. It makes it much more attractive for employees, and frankly, it is never something that we hear a concern raised by employers. They're happy to pay it because they see the value.
Okay, and when we talk about cooperation with the university system, is Wisconsin somewhat unique in the ability to have tech school, what we call our tech school credits, go to the university, and university credits go to the tech school?
I think that we are made a lot of good progress in that area, and particularly in apprenticeship, I think we are quite unique. I think we also have some other states around the country that we are using as models for us in terms of what is possible. Program to program articulation has not been something that has happened that much in Wisconsin in the past, but it is definitely our focus now. And I think for programs like apprenticeship, it's going to make a big difference in terms of that next step articulation from apprenticeship to a short-term certificate to an associate degree and a bachelor's.
Okay. Recently, I ran into somebody who knew somebody who graduated from Moraine Park. I think they went to the Beaver Dam campus. And we were told, I think they're going to be working on the electrical lines. Very challenging job, but they're making 6 figures. And one of the things that I have a problem with is so many people, including a lot of politicians, talk about a 4-year degree being a panacea and the height of achievement in society. And I always bristle when I hear politicians say that. what can we do to get politicians and other people in society to stop, maybe in a snobby way or whatever, always pushing the four-year degree?
I personally think that the career pathway model is the solution to a lot of different academic providers as well as industry employer recruiters, because the pathway model recognizes the fact that a high school diploma is not going to get you very far in your career in the next 20, 30, 40 years. Everybody needs to be continually learning. Industry is changing too fast for us to stop at any credential, and that goes true for a bachelor's as well. So our job as educators is to make sure that you can continually access increased skill sets and increased credentials. Employers are interested in matching their job opportunities with those kinds of credentials, paying people at the right amount for the right skill set, and then creating a pathway to advancement. And when you talk about it in terms of pathways, then it's not so much us against them, Representative, it's more about what role and what part do we all play in that path.
Okay.
So
I was at
what
an
I talk
Eagle
about.
Scout ceremony on Sunday, and I felt very good because, I always ask the Eagle Scouts who usually complete their Eagle Scout as a senior in high school. And I asked the guy what he was going to do, and, he was obviously a sharp guy. And he was good that we made progress, that this, telling me that, he was going to become an electrician. I thought, man, you made the right decision. But I think we're making progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trone of Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maryland, Mrs. Secretary Robinson, is one of 27 states that run their own state apprenticeship program. In Maryland and nationally, state apprenticeship agencies have played a key role in helping expand registered programs and serve more apprentices. Based on your experience, can you expand on your opening statement a bit about how Congress can codify and strengthen the role of state apprenticeship agencies and how we can support awareness and expansion of apprenticeship opportunities at state and local levels?
Sure, thank you, Congressman, for that question. I'd be happy to expand a little bit, and really I'd like to go back and start with my emphasis in my oral testimony about the appreciation for a dedicated annual funding stream. It is difficult to approach potential sponsors with a multi-year strategy for a new program when we have not had access to multi-year, consistent, and dedicated funding. So this is really a game changer in this reauthorization language that we're happy about. I would also say that we have worked very hard in Maryland to do that outreach and to spread the message that Dr. Foy just talked about. This apprenticeship is a career path, especially when we are working with our youth in K through 12 in our youth apprenticeship programs, making sure that everyone clearly understands that we're not talking about just a job. We're talking about a career path with very good wages to support your family, with advancement opportunities to potentially become the CEO, like you mentioned. Changing that message in Maryland has made all the difference, getting youth involved and excited. We're happy to see potentially through this act a stronger partnership with the Department of Education so that our state agency can work more closely with them in the schools to connect the kids to the employers. It's not in their nature to be out working with employers and attracting employers, but that's what we do at the Maryland Department of Labor in our state agency. So having the ability to work closer with our education partners and be in the schools to connect them to the employers, to work on that barrier removal, provide for transportation, have boots on the ground because of the guaranteed streamlined funding, to be able to have, provide the technical assistance they need to connect all the dots.
Thank you. Let's talk a second about apprenticeships in prison. Every year, over 700,000 incarcerated individuals leave state and federal prison and return to our local communities. For many years, these justice-impacted individuals, barriers such as lack of a post-secondary education and extended periods of unemployment make re-entering the workforce a challenge. Components of the registered apprenticeships offer incarcerated individuals the opportunity to overcome these obstacles and work on-the-job training that provides work experience, education that provides job-related instruction, and a nationally recognized credential that shows employers they can do the job. We know that access to registered apprenticeships and other employment pathways leads to great jobs with benefits and salaries that can sustain a family. We also know that the quality of long-term outcomes in corrections-based apprenticeships rarely matches those of registered apprenticeships outside the prison walls. And we have additional issues we need to address with inhumane wages in prison. Secretary Robinson and others, how can the reauthorization of the National Apprenticeship Support Act both support ongoing efforts to reform the criminal justice system and expand access to registered apprenticeships for individuals who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated?
Thank you. The Maryland State Agency works really closely with our state's Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to work with inmates behind the fence. I can give you an example. We have a quite new pre-apprenticeship program with the Associated Builders and Contractors, Metro Washington chapter, in our state to provide skilled trades training behind the fence for inmates where they will receive workplace skills, life skills, barrier removal, in addition to certifications, the first level of their construction basics craft training. This leads directly into and prepares them for a registered apprenticeship program when they re-enter their community. They will have the ability from this program to choose from HVAC and sheet metal occupations with wages starting at $14.50 an hour and completion of that apprenticeship paying $29 an hour. So it gives them that career path to look forward to. We know that they have barriers and we know that they need to be focused on early before that they re-enter the communities, and that's been the way we have handled it. We're appreciated for the additional funding to allow us to continue to do that.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can I mention one quick thing? I just want to say thank you for that, but also I'm thrilled to be working on a bipartisan bill with Congressman Guthrie from Kentucky in this space, and we're glad to see our provisions to support justice-impacted community folks are embedded in the discussion draft.
Thank you, Mr. Tone. Mr. Klein of Virginia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for appearing today. The future economic success of our nation lies in workforce education, and apprenticeships are a proven pathway to gainful employment that gives workers opportunities to earn a family-sustaining wage. While much of the national conversation these days is focused only on opportunities as they relate to attending college, I'm glad that this subcommittee recognizes the importance and value of apprenticeships by holding another hearing on ways to improve these lucrative programs. I want to also say that apprenticeships offer not only viable solutions, but profitable ones. They can help solve the skills gap that exists and work to fill the 7 million currently unfilled jobs in America. 7 million. Our focus needs to be on ensuring apprenticeships can continue to exist in an agile system that is responsive to the ever-changing work landscape. A large part of what makes apprenticeships work well is their ability to be customized at the state level to a specific career and to provide earn and learn opportunities for workers. Engaging employers in the creation of these apprenticeship programs better allows the training to follow the current market demands and to adjust as needed. Within industry, the particulars for careers vary by location, so encouraging states to take the lead better allows those particulars to consistently track with that specific market. Look forward to finding ways to encourage states to increase their involvement in apprenticeship programs. I enjoy hearing the great stories about the state programs that are in Wisconsin, in Maryland, and in my home state of Virginia. But what we are really talking about here, boiling it down to, is stripping away a lot of the federal program and direction, encouraging reciprocity among the states when it comes to a lot of these standards and getting the government out of the way. Ms. Noteboom, can you discuss what aspects of IBM's apprenticeship model have made it so successful?
Absolutely. First and foremost, we are hiring for IT jobs and creating an inclusive environment where our messaging is if you've got the right skills, you've got a career at IBM is critical for visibility to an underrepresented population. So key to our success is that we created apprenticeships and registered with them with the DOL and then sought partnerships with other employers. For example, the Consumer Technology Association that runs the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, we partnered with them to form the Apprenticeship Coalition to help drive industry awareness and adoption so that we can scale.
So a lot of private sector working together to establish these best practices.
But also, in coupling on Dr. Foy's good point from earlier, we're partnering with community colleges as well so that they can sponsor and use the registered apprenticeships that we've created. So we're partnering with Wake Tech, Moberly area community colleges, and many others. That's the success, is in the scale.
It's in a grassroots, ground-up, state-specific programs that you're working with here, not a federal top-down. I mean, yes, it's a federal program, but the innovation is coming from the state level, correct? And you mentioned best practices. Does the law prevent you from sharing best practices outside the apprenticeship process?
No.
Okay. Well, I think that what we want to do is to find a way to encourage the private sector to take the lead, encourage the states to take the lead. I think the draft that we've got here with a 15% non-federal match requirement is woefully inadequate. I think that we need to see the private sector in the states, the non-federal components of this step up to the plate. But I also think we need to find ways to empower states to better serve their communities, both through apprenticeship program creation and through promoting these opportunities to prospective apprentices. And we have to remember that we are running annual deficits of over $1 trillion. We have to ask whether it's responsible to consider a bill to expand programs, even successful programs that are well-meaning like these programs, when the majority hasn't presented a budget plan for the next year, and when we're putting so much on the federal government and leaving so little to be picked up by the states and by the private sector. So I look forward to continuing this conversation. And again, I appreciate the witnesses for being here. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Bonamici of Oregon.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Chair Davis and Ranking Member Smucker for this hearing today, and thank you to our witnesses, but thank you to the leadership of the committee for approaching this important issue on a bipartisan basis. I've often said that I'm a big believer in higher education, but we have to have a path for everyone, and not everyone is on the same path. And I have seen in my home state of Oregon where registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships are really helping people, and I'm especially looking at women and people of color and dislocated workers, and it's helping them access good paying jobs. It's so important. A few months ago, I had this great roundtable conversation. Our friends in labor at UA Local 290 Training Center, the Plumbers and Steamfitters, hosted it for us. We had about 30 people around the table, apprentices and union leaders. Sade, who's gone through the Steamfitters Local 290 program, said, "I love what I do. People who look like me coming into these spaces matters." Jackie said, "IBEW gave me a chance." Single moms like Sarah said, "Without Constructing Hope's pre-apprenticeship training program, I would never be here providing a better life for my kids and myself." And I noted there were 3 women there. We have this wonderful organization called Oregon Tradeswomen that is really helping women get into the trades and show them those opportunities. And I know how these registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships and youth apprenticeships are all helping workers, especially those with barriers, and we've had that conversation here this morning. As entire sectors of our economy are on the brink of significant transformation as well, we need to rapidly scale up our investments in registered apprenticeships to recognize the future of work and respond to local workforce needs, and I'm glad to see apprenticeships expanding in new fields. It's really important. I have worked with Chair Davis and Congressman Ferguson and Congressman Guthrie to introduce the Promoting Apprenticeships Through Regional Training Networks for Employers Required Skills, easier to remember as Partners Act. We've been working on this bipartisan bill that invests existing federal dollars in industry partnerships that bring together employers, education, training, labor, community-based organizations to facilitate the creation of these on-the-job programs that meet the demands of employers, but also provide workers with important support. I'm grateful that Chair Davis incorporated many of our provisions into this National Apprenticeship Act reauthorization we're working on today. And Mr. Bustillo, thank you so much for HCAP's continued support for the Partners Act. In your testimony, you discussed the importance of apprentices accessing supportive services, which is an important part of the bill, such as childcare, transportation, housing assistance. How do local intermediaries and industry partnerships support the expansion of registered apprenticeships, and how can these partnerships make sure that the apprentices are receiving the necessary supportive services that they need to succeed?
Thank you. So I'm going to answer it in the frame of healthcare as well, right? So thinking about healthcare, one of the things that I appreciate certainly about the Partners Act is the fact that there is a focus on intermediaries, obviously industry partnerships, but small and mid-sized firms as well.
Right.
So we think about healthcare. Normally, most folks would assume that healthcare employers are all large employers, which is not the case. We have many small and mid-sized firms in healthcare that have tremendous workforce needs, and we have a care crisis coming in this country. Right. So thinking about the direct care workers and the looming care crisis that we have as well, these are important considerations. So we have no 50-state healthcare employers, right? That does not exist. So intermediary partnerships at the local and regional level are certainly critical to helping develop the infrastructure and ecosystem that is needed to drive this work forward in healthcare. So thinking about intermediaries doing work related to wraparound services, supportive services as well, right? Whether it's directly through those organizations, working with employers and unions on coming up with solutions to that, working with local human service provider organizations as well. It's really about creating that local infrastructure and that connection across the continuum, which includes career and technical educations and community colleges as well, thinking about removing some of the administrative burden to expand these programs, and also thinking about aggregating demand, right, which is really important in healthcare if you think about small and mid-sized firms. Those are all critical considerations to helping drive this work forward in healthcare.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And as with our aging population, we really need to address the needs in healthcare. Secretary Robinson, in your testimony, you mentioned that Maryland uses Department of Labor Apprenticeship Expansion Grant funding to support pre-apprenticeship programs. Why is it important for pre-apprenticeships to be registered?
So the pre-apprenticeship prepares those that may have barriers that aren't quite ready to enter the registered apprenticeship to kind of get what they need, to get the initial skills training, to be on a path where they can step into a position where they are ready to take on the learning and earning model. We have, you mentioned kind of regional areas. We have assigned regional apprenticeship navigators that work out of some of our American job centers, kind of using some of our Wagner-Pizer money to help direct people to apprenticeships when it works. That works well for us in terms of pre-apprenticeship programs, because obviously our American job centers are hubs for all kinds of agencies to focus on that barrier removal. We're working at that level in the pre-apprenticeship timeframe to do everything that they need to get them ready to step into the registered apprentice role so that we can make sure that they're successful.
Terrific. Thank you. My time has expired.
Thank you. Dr. Fox of North Carolina, who is the ranking member of the full Labor and Education Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today also. Dr. Foy, I appreciated your testimony highlighted the need for increased alignment between education and the workforce, and you talked about the importance of having a focus on on-ramps to lifelong learning. I believe those principles speak to the need for students and families to have as many options as possible for pathways to successful careers. And by the way, a lot of people are using that word pathways, and I think it is a good word to use. How has your experience with the apprenticeship model in Wisconsin helped you send the message that there are other alternatives beside the traditional baccalaureate pathway that people tend to focus on?
I think several of the witnesses have testified to this effect already, but the connection between various kinds of apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, is a part of that pathway concept, and it helps us reach a broader audience in terms of what's available and what kind of compensation options are available. I think the expansion of the areas in which apprenticeship is now being recognized as a valuable pathway or, in our minds, a delivery model for higher ed. I think the youth apprenticeship movement in Wisconsin has made a huge difference, Representative, because we are getting an opportunity to expose younger people earlier on. And the fact that we connect that exposure now to actual, not just high school credit, but college credit, makes it a lot more appealing. You know what, it legitimizes it. It's not just, I'm checking out what it would be like to be an electrician. I'm earning college credit while I'm doing this. And
Congratulations
that makes a big
to
difference.
you on what you all are doing in Wisconsin.
Thank you
That's
very much.
great. Ms. Noteboom, as you know, I think I've been very familiar with what IBM is doing and have visited with your folks there, the New Collar Program. What benefits have you seen from expanding the talent pool that IBM is drawing from in meeting the labor market needs? So you've alluded to it, but if you want to say more, that's fine.
Sure. From my personal experience, I've hired hundreds of candidates in places like Raleigh, Baton Rouge, Columbia, Missouri, and we had the ability to open the doors of IBM and showcase our professions and allow and create pathways for folks in the community to access our professions through apprenticeships. This allowed IBM to custom train and educate resources on exactly the skills we need, providing them opportunity and help lessening the skill gap for us.
Well, I do want to ask you to start using the word education and not say train. I have to bring it up if anybody says that word, because I will tell you again, every time you use that word, you think dog. Because what I learned in my doctoral work is you train dogs and you educate people. And I don't think any of you mean to say that, but that's the implication. And so I would ask you if you would do that. Would you make another comment or two about the P-TECH program? Because I'm fairly familiar with it, but if you would talk a little bit more about it. And particularly, I think you all have had a lot of success in New York in the P-TECH program.
Yes, our P-TECH model creates pathways in students grades 9 to 14 to earn both a high school diploma and an industry-recognized post-secondary degree at no cost. So it exposes them to in-demand high-tech jobs at an earlier point than traditional. And what's amazing about the program, and it has truly scaled, we've got 220 schools, 600 employer partners, and we're in 24 countries. It showcases to these individuals that they have options. They have a career pathway in IT, or they could pursue higher education, and many have.
Well, and I think there is a way for this to be replicated by other industries. And in my area, I'm seeing what they call healthcare academies and other things like this. Ms. Robinson, I'd like to make one comment about something you were saying before. You were talking about these programs as though all they do is prepare you for a career. And I think it is important that we emphasize that all education is focused on our getting a career. If people get a baccalaureate degree, I think we have a sense, and it's part of our problem, I believe, in our country, that we've developed a sense that if you, quote, get an education, you don't go to work. And if you get something less than a baccalaureate degree, you work. Well, I'd like to say that everybody I know almost that has a baccalaureate degree that wants to work actually works. And I think it's important we not distinguish between the two. And not, in some of your comments, it appears that that's the way you're doing it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And next, we have Mr. Norcross from New Jersey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's 214 lawyers in Congress and only one electrician, and you're looking at them. So I know a little bit about this, and the narrative that somehow, in order to make it in this world, you have to go to a 4-year degree is something that we're hearing today over and over that is absolutely not true. You know, it might be right for some. As I like to say, when my kids were born, I didn't know if they wanted to go to college, build the college, or defend the college. We need each of those in our society. And most importantly, we need to value them equally. That somehow if you go to college, you're better than, is certainly not the way. And I will say, construction site to Congress is not the normal pathway, but it's something that we understand. So I want to go into a couple of issues concerning how we got here as a nation. You know, our parents, teachers, counselors, all put into our heads as we're going through school, college. Not service to your country, not going into a trade. So I think fundamentally it starts at home, that whether you work with your hands and your head in an apprenticeship that might take you through the electrical, the UA, the IBW, or you go to a 4-year school. At age 18, I ask people this on a regular basis. When you decided what you want to do before you graduate high school, are you doing what you thought you were going to do? And almost across the board, nobody is where they thought they would be. It's called life. That's why the idea of going to college at 18 is perfect for some who know what they want to do and are focused on that. But the on-ramps and the off-ramps that our ranking member talked about are so important. We did a 4-year apprenticeship program. I went back to college later on. There's others who went back, picked up the college degree because they want to pursue a career. So at different points in your life, college works for some. But let me walk back. The building trades for over 100 years have been building an apprenticeship program second to none. Have virtually no money from government put into them. They are self-funded, they do a great job. But having standards, so critically important, because the construction industry in itself is transient. You have the ebbs and flows, and with that, the workforce. So without standards, the idea of an electrician being trained in California to a different set of standards is ridiculous. The idea that they come back and forth, we go within workplaces across this country is incredibly important. So standards there. But we also have to be open for industry outside of the building trades to create their own apprenticeship programs, those standards. So what do we want to talk about with you, Mr. Bastille? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Bustillo.
Bastille. SEIU, somebody who traditionally wasn't involved in those career paths that involved the building trades, but they're outside that. So for instance, as a first-year electrician, you would never be sent to a job in order to work there alone. You work through side by side with the journeyman as you go through, and more. But in the nursing industry, you have to wait till you graduate before you start work. They have not made that transition. Would you walk through some of the programs SEIU and others have worked with over the years to kind of explain the difference between waiting till the end of your formal education to start an apprenticeship where you work through it?
Sure, I'm happy to do so. So in my written testimony, I provided a list of the nationally registered occupations that HCAP has. We have 13 different occupations registered nationally with 2 pending. 14 of those are in healthcare. One of them is in childcare as well, because we have done some registered apprenticeship childcare work, which is a critical need. So clearly there is a difference, right? And I think you're right in saying that the quality standards, one of the things that's attractive to us is the quality and rigor of a registered apprenticeship framework, right? I think that is clearly something that's been well established. Healthcare is a different industry in the sense of, and you don't see any nursing occupations other than licensed practical nurse listed on what I told you. Healthcare is a highly credentialed and licensed and regulated environment, and there is a difference between pre-licensure and post-licensure. So if you look at registered apprenticeship programs around the country that are nursing related, the majority of them are post-licensure, just because of some misfit between the registered apprenticeship model and some of the regulations around nursing boards and things of that sort. So we have certainly focused on a variety of other occupations where there's critical industry need in healthcare. So most of these are hospital-based, but some of them are community-based as well, too. So home care, as an example, where individual home care workers, we know, I'm using home care as a catch-all, 1.2 million workers are going to be needed over the next decade. that is a different model in the sense that you're working in someone's home as well. You are not at a physical work site. You're not in a hospital. It's a disaggregated site of employment. So the models are a little bit different, but the mentorship component that you're referring to is certainly something that we take very seriously and have developed a lot of resources around, because clearly that's one of the things that differentiates the registered apprenticeship model from more traditional training models.
Thank you. Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate this hearing. This is a huge issue all over America. One of the biggest challenges and obstacles I hear from my employers and job creators in my congressional district in Kentucky is the fact that they have a difficult, if not impossible, time finding enough skilled workers. Whether it's Tartar Gate Company, which is the largest farm equipment manufacturer in the United States, which is located in Casey County, Kentucky, or Amazon's Fulfillment Center, which is one of the original fulfillment centers, which is in Camelsville, Kentucky. Anytime I stop in and meet with a pretty large employer, their challenge isn't necessarily the trade war or tax policy or the regulatory environment, which they have concerns with all three of those. Their biggest concern is the fact that they can't find workers, and that impedes their ability to grow and expand and invest additional capital, which we so desperately need in this economy. As I travel around to high schools and middle schools, and I talk to students or talk to parents of children in school now, I talk to them about the great technical system that we've built in Kentucky. Congressman Guthrie mentioned that earlier. Kentucky's made a significant investment in area technology centers next to high schools. Kentucky's made a significant investment in the community colleges all across the state. And we're starting to have a lot better communication between industry leaders, employers, and the education system on what type of curriculum to offer and to provide. And they're starting to be more flexible, which is something that you've all discussed in your testimony today. But we still have a challenge in Kentucky getting students enrolled in these classes. Even though we have fabulous schools, fabulous facilities, we have good communication between the employers and the school system on what type of curriculum to offer and which instructors to use, there's still a stigma out there with parents and with some school officials we're not going to push students that route. We're going to push students to go to a university and get a four-year degree. I meet students every day that have recently graduated from college with excessive amounts of student loan debt, something we talk about in this committee each week, but they can't find a job based on the degree they attained all that student loan debt in. What can we do in Congress? My question is for everyone on the panel. If you could briefly give us an answer. What can we do in Congress to reverse that stigma and to successfully encourage more students to enroll in these classes, which are so desperately needed in the workforce?
Congressman, I'll begin. We would urge the House to remove the obstacles in the Higher Education Act, as I mentioned in my oral testimony, to help better prepare students for apprenticeship programs and remove the barriers and restrictions on short-term programs and federal work study, so enabling more access to certificate programs, for example, under 600 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I would support that as well. I would support looking at using student financial aid support for shorter-term programs as long as they can demonstrate quality. Honestly, Representative, having hearings like this, considering reauthorization of the National Apprenticeship Bill after all these decades, keeping the focus on career paths and options for career paths, having you talk about this has an impact. People listen, just like they listen to our big state employers and national employers talking about different ways to be successful in their companies. Learners are really changing, and education maybe is chasing their tail in a bit, but putting the pressure on educators to make sure that all of our options lead to each other. We have a lot of bachelor's degree holders in Wisconsin, too, that are not finding employment opportunities. Well, it's on us to make sure that other educational programs, apprenticeship, technical certifications, are available to them without having to start over at square one. That is the biggest barrier we have, actually, is repeating work, repeating time and expense to get to a new credential or an advanced credential. And that's an industry credential or an academic one. So we need to really work on that, and we need you to keep holding our feet to the fire and talking about it as a valuable option.
Well, I can assure you I will do that. I know many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will continue to do that, because that's a complaint we hear every day from our employers. And you know, it's just hard to imagine that there's been so much information already spread out about this is where you can make more money. These are available jobs right now, right after graduation. Many times employers will pay for tuition for students to go to these programs so they can graduate without student loan debt, which is a huge issue in America right now. So I'm going to continue to do my job.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question. Ms. Jayapala of Washington State.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this is just such a wonderful hearing. I was thinking as I was listening to you, Dr. Foy, that my husband is from Pittsburgh, and thanks to Social Security death benefits, when his dad died, he was actually able to get a 4-year education, but then he really wanted to do something with his hands. And so he enrolled in a 3-year apprenticeship program that was both on the job and classroom, and became a bricklayer and a marble mason and journey level. And he talks about that experience all the time. And it is just so valuable, the work that you all do. So thank you. Apprenticeships, especially joint labor management programs, are effective in helping workers move into skilled and middle-class jobs. And in my home state of Washington, joint labor management apprenticeship programs increased total compensation for an individual apprentice by an incredible average of over $810,000 over the apprenticeship's lifetime. But there are barriers that keep many disadvantaged and underrepresented workers from starting and staying in apprenticeships, barriers that Congress has the power to address as we reauthorize the National Apprenticeship Act. I heard about many of these similar barriers when I was a Washington State Senator, and so I created within the Department of Transportation the Washington State Pre-Apprenticeship Support Services Program, which helps socially and economically disadvantaged people, specifically women and folks of color, to complete their apprenticeships by addressing those barriers and linking the funding to community-based organizations that could both recruit but also help people through as they went into a very undefined and new environment. It has been incredibly successful. It is partnerships between the building trades unions, employers, and community-based organizations. The iron workers, just as an example, have also learned a lot of lessons, the importance of trade-specific training to increase retention of those, for example, who enter the construction industry but don't have all the terminology when they get in there. The PASS program has yielded impressive results, and it's now been expanded. It has served 780 people in the last 2 years with a graduation rate of 92%. And the program has been particularly effective in supporting people who are formerly incarcerated to access middle-class jobs. So, Mr. Bustillo, let me start with you and ask, what specific kinds of supportive services should the committee prioritize to help workers overcome those barriers to completing pre-apprenticeship programs?
Thank you. So I think the biggest issues that we see are some of the obvious ones like childcare. I think transportation you mentioned as well, clearly important. Housing assistance, but oftentimes folks who are in educational programs are derailed through some unexpected emergency as well. So there have been some emergency assistance funds as well that are a little bit more comprehensive that I think have been highly successful. So I would think about those four to start with.
Very flexible funds too.
Yes.
Yeah. Secretary Robinson, under your leadership, the Maryland Department of Labor has identified some key barriers to employment and apprenticeship. Are there particular ones that you want to make sure that you emphasize today for us to think about?
Thank you. I would mention back the comments that I made earlier about our reentry programs. Oftentimes that population has significant barriers, so the funding for pre-apprenticeship behind the fence allows us to take care of those so that they are ready and prepared to move into a registered apprenticeship. We also, I might add that flexibility in the state match that is allowed to count state funding that is set aside for this type of barrier removal would be helpful. We, in Maryland, have a program called EARN, Employment Advancement right now, that is industry-led. We seek out partnerships of employers. We ask them exactly what skills and what gaps they have in their workforce. We have them kind of tell us what they're looking for, and we pull together and recruit cohorts of individuals to be educated and trained. What we do during that time frame, it is kind of another version of a pre-apprenticeship. We spend a lot of time removing barriers, everything from transportation, healthcare, housing, creating the curriculum. And the benefit of that is when they're done, they either have interviews already set up with some of those industry partners, or they are ready to move into a registered apprenticeship program.
Ms. Notebloom, I have 17 seconds left, but what role can pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs play in strengthening diversity and representation in these industries?
IBM believes it has a responsibility as a corporate steward to make tech very inclusive. And by improving the pathways and opening them up to a larger underrepresented population, it does just that. Makes the population more accessible to technology and vice versa.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I request unanimous consent to enter into the following documents into the record. The Washington State Report on the PASS program, story of a formerly homeless Washington youth served by a pre-apprenticeship program, and the Washington State Labor Council's 2019 report on apprenticeships.
Thank you. Unanimous consent without objection.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, Mr. Muser of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Chairwoman Davis, very much, and Ranking Member Smucker, and certainly thank all of you for being here with us today. Like many of my colleagues, a key priority of mine for my district is economic revitalization. Workforce development comes up every day, usually several times a day, and it does play a very key role in maximizing our local economy and job employment and such. There are many schools in my district, especially one that I boast about often, Conrad Weiser in Berks County, as well as Central Columbia High School, that have implemented curriculums and plans that really expose high school students, Conrad Weiser more towards STEM initiatives, but various technical career paths, and it's fantastic. You see young people who perhaps weren't getting the most out of their education, and now they have a bounce in their step, and they're very enthused about what they're working on, and clearly it's very important. We also have a number of career and technical institutes, as do many districts, but I think ours are in Pennsylvania's 9th Congressional are fantastic. And they have many, many students these days, thanks to various student funds and student loans being made available for career and technical schools. The Schuylkill Career and Technical Center, the Berks County Career and Technical Center, the Carbon, and a few others. So we really have our share, but we're still not maximizing the connectivity between the private sector, skills development, and the schools. So that's why I'm happy to have this hearing. And my first question will go to Ms. Noteboom. Good to see you again. You put together an impressive plan, apprenticeship program at IBM. How do you think that can be applied well to smaller businesses or mid-sized businesses?
Small and mid-sized businesses in today's digital economy have a need for many of the same skill sets for the registered apprenticeships that we're creating, so they can reuse those. We also have partnerships with local community colleges, so they can sponsor the DOL's registered apprenticeship programs, take them and apply them to local employers.
Okay. I'm holding a roundtable workforce development day in my district next week or the week after. And what would you suggest? We have businesses, we've got some of the career and technical schools, I've got chambers coming in. I have every party and stakeholder, I think, along the way here. Hopefully I'm going to have a couple of students to provide their input as well. So what would you discuss? What would you bring up at such a meeting? And what sort of ideas could you share with me that would be that would help us maximize what we're all working on?
I would express that you state the benefits of both the apprentice and the employer. So showcasing to the apprenticeship candidates that it's an opportunity, another area of choice, another pathway other than pursuing a four-year degree. And then to the employer, there are many benefits. They are able to get the right mix of skills that they need for their business and also work with local community colleges to provide related technical instruction.
You know, I find the private sector drives this, right? They know what they need, they know the people they need, they know what products they're making and what skills are necessary. I get concerned that sometimes we're pushing it from the education side of it. I mean, it needs to be balanced come the end of the day. What sort of, outside of demand for the right people, which is clear, are there any other incentives that you can think of, or any of you for that matter, in the limited time, for how to activate the private sector more so towards understanding and appreciate and gain knowledge on the career and technical schools and the skills development that is taking place? Or do you find it should be more done by the business themselves?
We've partnered with many organizations through the Consumer Technology Association. We formed an apprenticeship coalition to help drive industry awareness and adoption of programs like the Registered Apprenticeship Program. There are over 40 companies in that of all sizes. They are scaling apprenticeships, and it allows us to be more responsive in them as well to their changing skill needs.
All right, thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Lee of Nevada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member, for having this hearing today on apprenticeship programs, and all of you for testifying. One issue I want to address is lining our push for high-quality apprenticeships with critical or emerging sectors of our modern economy, such as our cybersecurity workforce. I'm proud to have introduced the Cyber Ready Workforce Act with Representative Stefanik. And this act will award grants to workforce entities to support the creation of registered apprenticeship programs in cybersecurity. Specifically, this registered apprenticeship program would include industry-recognized certification in cybersecurity and encourage stackable and portable credits. Secretary Robinson, I was interested to read through your testimony on particular industries and occupations that were once considered non-apprenticeable. You referenced new innovations in registered apprenticeship and the culture shift in how instruction is provided to those apprentices. Can you walk us through the strategy that your state used in bolstering apprenticeship programs in formerly non-traditional areas such as information technology and cybersecurity?
Sure, thank you. Our Maryland Apprenticeship Training Council listens to proposals from all industries on any type of proposed, in these non-traditional industries, usually competency-based programs. We work through them. We provide a lot of hands-on technical assistance. We also work with sponsors and try to recruit sponsors that serve as intermediaries. For example, we have a university that is serving as a cyber intermediary and helping us to recruit and register sponsors through our council. That has been really helpful. They have students on campus with cyber programs, and so the direct education piece is a no-brainer. I would say that in competency-based programs, these types of non-traditional industries, didn't used to look at apprenticeship as a model because they didn't like the longer time frame. They wanted to see the specific skill attainment, and they are willing to stick with someone a little bit longer if it takes them a little bit longer, and they'd like to see if someone can pass certain levels of those skill attainment sooner. They can push them right into earning more wages. And it works in Maryland. We have 25 competency-based programs right now, and that number is growing. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Noteboom, obviously, I love the model that you all use, and hopefully in Nevada, my home state, we can sort of combine the lessons from both and move this forward, because it's obviously an incredibly important area for us, not just in Nevada, but across the country. Another issue that this committee has explored within the context of evaluating employment trends is the future of work. And with the rapid changes in innovation affecting sectors of our economy, it's clear we need to think about what the resulting implications for the workforce will be. In particular, in my home state of Nevada, is the most vulnerable to the effects of job automation, according to a study by the company Smart Asset. And in particular, the Las Vegas metro area ranks in the top 5 of 150 metropolitan areas that were analyzed. So this is an incredibly important issue for our workforce development. And my question would be to both you, Secretary Robinson and Dr. Foy, in terms of your workforce development strategies, including bolstering apprenticeship opportunities, can you explain to what extent you have taken into account any data or analysis concerning automation or other job-related risks to specific occupation categories?
I'll start. It's actually one of the driving forces, I think, behind some of our new industry's interest in apprenticeship. We started talking about it as a delivery model, not as something reserved exclusively for the trades. And that concern about automation is really, for us, a lifelong learning problem, because we don't have a lot of new Wisconsinites being born. We don't have a lot of new Wisconsinites graduating from high school, certainly not at the levels that we have had in the past. So our employers are faced with a situation of they have literally two choices. They can upskill their current workforce, and they can tap into previously non-participants in their industry, so attracting new groups from our population. And apprenticeship is a great way to do that, because you're working while you're learning, and there's virtually no cost to apprentices in our state. So it's actually how we're addressing the automation, is that we are giving our incumbent workforce the skills they're going to need to run those machines instead of doing the work the machines are doing.
Great, thanks. I've run out of time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sorry.
Let's go to Mr. Scott of Virginia, the chairman of the full Education and Labor Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Robinson, Ms. Noteboom pointed out the benefits for the apprentice and for the employer. Have you tracked students going through these programs to see what benefit it would be to the government in terms of increased taxes, less reliance on social services, so that when the government makes investments in these programs, you actually get a good return?
So we have an entire data team. We appreciate the data that comes from the United States Department of Labor, but we have an entire data team in our state agency as well. I may have to get back to you on some of those specific numbers, but we look at trends in savings in all sectors of our apprenticeship programs. So I'd love to follow up on that. I would like to say that in terms of the youth side of things, we talked earlier about informing them this is a career path. Oftentimes, We are talking more to the parents in that regard, because it is the parents we need to convince that this is an alternate career path. Oftentimes for the student, it is important for us to emphasize that they will be allowed to earn wages and make money while they are learning, and they will come out of an apprenticeship with skills and credentials that they can take with them forever, no matter where their career takes them.
And in terms of the return on investment from government, I mean, if you have less social services, more taxes, if you're talking about youth, probably less incarceration, it seems to be a good investment on behalf of the government.
A very good investment indeed.
Ms. Foy, can you talk about transferability of credits in terms of apprentice programs? If someone's in a program, whether or not they should be able to transfer credits to a four-year institution?
Yes, they should be. I think the trick is making sure that we're preparing them properly, because it doesn't do the student or the apprentice any good to send them to a four-year path that they're not properly aligned with what they've learned and how they've, what they know. So we're working on that. We've had some success already in Wisconsin. Again, this is a changing response to the new student. They want to learn the way they want to learn, in the time frame that they want to learn, and they don't tolerate slowness on our part. So we're working on it. I think it's an important part of the process, but truthfully, employers like IBM, like the National Health Associations, they're driving the interest of four-year institutions in this model because, again, they want to hire and upskill their current workforce. So you got a great employee, came through apprenticeship program, now you want to make them a supervisor, they want to put them into management, they want them to have a bachelor's degree, and they need to push four-year institutions to make those connections.
Is there anything the federal government needs to do to make sure the credits are transferable? Is that something that needs to be done at the state community college level?
I think that just recognizing the role of education in the apprenticeship model, that it's not something for workforce departments or labor departments only to care about, that puts the emphasis, and that's something that the Congress has the power to do by making agreements between the Department of Education, making that responsibility and that role formalized in the Apprenticeship Authorization Act.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we've heard a lot about the short-term Pell program, and I think that we have, just let the witnesses know, we have, I think, a consensus that we know Pell Grants can be used for college courses that lead to a degree, but at this time, if all it leads to is a good job, can't use the Pell Grant. And I think the idea that you would be able to use it for a quality program that leads to a good job is something we ought to do. The trick, as we've heard, is to maintain quality. And I think we can trust the community colleges or the workforce investment boards if they're referring to a program. I think if we restrict the use to those, we won't get into the problem where somebody can open up a storefront operation and just take all the Pell Grant money and provide no real service. But I think there is a consensus that the short-term Pell ought to be available. Our community colleges in Virginia have established these kinds of short-term programs, pre-apprentice programs, for example, where in 8 to 16 weeks you can learn, you can get the benefit, you can be first in line for an apprenticeship, your income will go up 25, 50, 100% as they've studied. But if you don't have the money for the course, you can't go. If you can use a Pell Grant, you can probably cover the tuition and a little money left over for living expenses so you can actually afford to go. So I think there's a consensus on that, and if we pass a higher education bill, I think you can count on that being part of it.
Thank you. Mr. Takano from California.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chairwoman Davis and Ranking Member Smucker for this bipartisan hearing on the reauthorization of the National Apprenticeship Act and the need to increase high-quality registered apprenticeship programs. As our witnesses have stated, the Earn As You Learn model is the foundation of an apprenticeship program. Similar to Wisconsin, my home state of California is making some great strides in expanding this apprenticeship model to the K-12 system. Dr. Foy, in your testimony, you laid out the model for youth apprenticeships where a student receives a diploma, some college credit, and a certificate of occupational proficiency from the state's workforce department. My question to you is, what steps did Wisconsin take to transition to an embedded model where college credit is a key component of the apprenticeship pathway?
We were fortunate that it's a key component of our educational pathway, so we were already connecting the dots. We award over 100,000 college credits to high school students in our state every year. So apprenticeship was sort of the next step to that, is with making sure that the youth apprenticeship curriculum was aligned with their high school curriculum and then with technical college curriculum. So it was truthfully a lot of conversation between teachers, between educators, making sure that they were covering the same thing, and also connecting those conversations with our employers. Everything we do in Wisconsin is focused on providing the talent pipeline for local employers. So we would be bringing in major employers in a region or an area and getting them to talk to high school students and getting them to talk to high school faculty, because that is really the key for them to understand each other's work.
Well, thank you. Those conversations with high school faculty is really critical. Often they get, I think, isolated from the kinds of connections they need to be making to have these programs be effective. As we've heard, wraparound services and creating local infrastructure are important. So, Dr. Foy, what are the best ways for states to leverage community college infrastructure with their registered apprenticeship programs?
I think community colleges are in a good spot to be helpful here because we emphasize a lot of wraparound services. We tend to be smaller. We tend to have, majority of our students are part-time, so they are heavy users of childcare, transportation, and other services that is a normal part of our delivery process. It's expected that they'll be available. It's one of the good, I think, reasons why apprenticeship programs tend to thrive in a community college setting, because those wraparound and support services are already in place for our general student population. I think another important service that needs to be provided is, again, this concept of paid-related instruction and financial aid for short-term certifications, of which apprenticeship can be one. And that's, I think, important because a lot of students, they're not looking necessarily to get something free, especially if they're a person that likes the idea of apprenticeship, because they are working. They are earning these educational opportunities. They are earning these wage opportunities. So I think that that's one of the reasons why the community college setting makes a good educational base for apprenticeship programs. And frankly, I just cannot say it enough. We have great relationships with employers because many of our faculty, in Wisconsin's case, all of our faculty have actually worked in the industries in which they are educating. So it's a lot easier for them to call up an employer than a K-12 teacher, for example.
Very quickly, I just want to ask this last question. We know that many of our veterans come back from their service with skill sets that do not translate over to a traditional credit or fit into the apprenticeship model. How do you suggest we work to get these veterans' their service counted as prior learning?
I think the idea of building crosswalks between military experience and military work and academic programs that people pursue through various service agency colleges is very important. It's ongoing work happening across the nation with employer partners and with our Workforce Development Board partners and with community colleges. So that's really the key. It's not that they aren't earning the skill set or that they are not learning the same kind of competencies that are being taught in an apprenticeship. It's that we haven't formally recognized the relationship between what happens when you're doing military service and what happens when you're in civilian life. So it's that crosswalk building that needs to be done.
Thank you, Dr. Foy, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Adams in North Carolina.
Thank you, Chairwoman Davis, and thank you for your work on the National Apprenticeship Act reauthorization. I know this bill has been a priority for you for a very long time, as it has been to all of us who know that registered apprenticeships are essential pathways to a middle-class life. Thank you to the folks here to testifying today. And that's why this is so important. The NAA hasn't been reauthorized or revisited by Congress since its enactment in 1937. So I don't have to tell anybody here the different ways our workforce has changed since 1937. And one obvious way is that the role of women in our economy, though unfortunately you wouldn't be able to tell it by the numbers. So as of 2017, women made up only 7.3% of apprenticeships nationwide. Furthermore, women tend to be enrolled in apprenticeships with lower pay scales, such as child care, where the median journey person wage is only $9.75 an hour compared to $23.46 an hour, the corresponding wage for the top male apprenticeship occupation, electrician. So I want to open this up to the entire panel and to respond. How can our nation attract more women into registered apprenticeships as a career pathway, and how can we ensure equitable access to registered apprenticeships in higher-paying occupations and industries?
I'd like to start.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Thank you for the question. I would start by saying that it begins with our youth. Our messaging to our students and our collaboration with our education partners is crucial to make sure that our young women understand that they are fully equipped to enter into some of these industries, especially the non-traditional industries. The way that apprenticeship has expanded through competency-based programs into areas like healthcare, hospitality, the list goes on and on. Cyber, we have a wonderful organization in Maryland called Girls Go Cyber that are winning competitions across the state and the nation. We're proud to support them in that. But allowing our youth to see that happening and providing our teachers, our counselors, and everyone in the school system with the information and the connectivity to the employers that have those opportunities available, I think is the key.
Yeah, you can be what you see. Yes, Dr. Ford?
Yeah, I would say that I love that answer, first of all. And secondly, that it's been an evolution of our employers in our state. We are not necessarily the most diverse, but that desire to change that is very strong right now. And it's been a real pleasure for me to see our state's employers taking the lead on not just their desire to diversify, but the actual critical economic need for them to do so. It is good business, and it is good business practice. And so they're the ones taking the lead, changing their work environment, changing their cultural environment, so that if a person enters into an apprenticeship program in their company, they're not going to be the only woman there. They're not going to be the only person of color there. And if they are the first, they won't be the last.
Okay, Ms. Noble.
IBM believes that companies bringing advanced technologies to market have a responsibility to prepare people for the way those technologies shape jobs. Innovation should unlock opportunities for everyone to make our workforce more inclusive, not less. So by recognizing learning agility and prior skills, we are tapping into a workforce that enables another pathway for them to succeed.
Okay, Mr. Bustillo.
So I would add two things. I think it is extremely important that we do the hard and critical work of really making the progressions we talk about substantively supported by wraparound support services. I think that, and also focus on a range of occupations. In healthcare, as an example, we have a severe overrepresentation of workers of color in the entry-level, lower-wage positions, severe underrepresentation in other occupations. So we also have to do the work of creating registered apprenticeship programs and pathways, not just for those entry-level positions, entry into the profession, but moving up in the profession as well.
Okay. Well, a registered apprenticeship can impose a barrier to entry for people with low incomes due to the cost of tools and equipment. So do you have any suggestions about that? Yeah, well, actually, I'm out of time. Madam Chair, I'm going
Yes.
to yield back. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, North Carolina.
Thank you. And since Chairwoman Adams did not ask me to yield him by time, I'll go ahead and take the full 5 minutes there. So, but Ms. Noteboom, you mentioned in your testimony that IBM has hired apprentices from my home state of North Carolina, where we have an Office of Apprenticeships within the state's Department of Labor, as you probably know. As you're aware, this often forces apprenticeships, in my opinion, sponsors specifically, to comply with two sets of standards and regulations that are contradicting, or I would say repetitive, extending approval processes. So this is where I'm wanting to hone in a little bit. Can you speak to the challenges that you have all faced due to delayed approvals for new standards?
I think that there are several complexities that are implementations to barrier for companies, and the length of time that it takes to get something registered with the U.S. Department of Labor is one of them. So that's an inhibitor to other employers who are looking to leverage this program.
Okay, how do you think these delays and duplicative requirements have affected your long-term ability to offer these training opportunities?
I think it just slows us down.
Okay, so be a little bit of a impediment, I would think. I want to move on for just a minute to talk about the federal work-study reform. Recently, the DOE, the Department of Education, announced a new program in 5 institutions of higher education just in North Carolina to provide additional flexibility to students participating in federal work-study program. I was encouraged by this announcement because this would enable more students to have access to relevant job training experiences while they are simultaneously still earning their degree. Can you explain how these earn and learn opportunities are important for workers that are in your apprenticeship programs? Ms. Noteboom.
So when I was hiring many of the apprentices across our locations, I was particularly excited when I talked to these folks and their eyes lit up because they had no idea that IBM would give them the education, the related technical instruction, and the skills that they need to succeed, whether it be in a 24-month apprenticeship time period or 12. So it depends on whether it's a mainframe systems administration position or cybersecurity. So what was exciting is that, you know, given how fast skills are changing, you know, the half-life of skills are shrinking, what this does is it helps individuals be lifelong learners. They're constantly learning to keep their skills relevant.
Oh, very good point there. Ms. Noteboom, again, you highlighted earlier the pivotal role apprenticeships play in the lives of workers that do not have access to traditional education avenues. Last year, I was proud to introduce the Prison to Prosperity Act, which expanded pathways to job training programs for underrepresented populations, including formerly incarcerated individuals, veterans, and students who have not graduated high school. In your experience, I'd like to ask, how would you describe the benefits these apprenticeship programs have on individuals that may not have the ability to enter the workforce otherwise?
So one thing that we've seen a lot of success with is our Pathways in Technology program for high school students. So it's a 9 through 12 program that in addition to their high school curriculum, they get access to IT skills. And then at the end, they're emboldened to either pursue a career in IT with us or one of the 600 employers that's partnering with us on the opportunity, or they go on to higher education. So that's a great example of a pre-apprenticeship opportunity.
I don't want to be too leading, but would you agree that enhancing workforce development opportunities for these underrepresented populations not only, how do I want to phrase this, has a direct impact for the worker, but also a greater economic result or return?
What we're excited about at IBM is enabling the workforce with skills. So, you know, we will always at IBM attract the best and the brightest, whether it's mathematicians who do have a 4-year degree. I mean, we're the largest private entity that has mathematicians. We have the largest, I should say, population of them. But with new collar roles and with apprenticeships in particular, we're expanding people's opportunity to enter.
Yeah, very well said. Not in my notes, but I can see it from you, and I assume it's from Ms. Robinson, Dr. Foy, Mr. Bastillo. This means something to you. This is rewarding. Is that fair to say?
It's absolutely fair to say, from my personal vantage point, even though I have a degree from Cornell, I was the beneficiary of a program like that in high school. I was in a computer-aided drafting course at the same time I was pursuing, my regular high school curriculum. And what was amazing is it gave me choice.
Yeah.
I had awareness.
I can tell it's passionate and it's personal for you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. And we've somewhat come to almost the end, but not quite, because we have some members off the committee who are going to ask questions. But before that, I want to go to our ranking member, Mr. Smucker, who did not ask his questions earlier, and I will follow him. And then our colleagues who've been waiting so long, you'll go next. Mr. Smucker.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful discussion. Appreciate the work that each of you are doing in your organizations. I want to follow up a little to Representative Comer's comments in regards to the stigma around the trades and apprenticeship programs and so on. And I've seen it firsthand. In fact, I wasn't, Mr. Norcross mentioned earlier, he was an electrician who came to Congress. I started out hanging drywall. It's similar to him, came from a construction background, and then ran a construction company, owned a construction company, and constantly were faced with, we had several hundred employees faced with the shortage of people who were interested in the construction trades, and we saw that stigma firsthand. One of the things that, Dr. Foy, you mentioned is you're doing things in K through 12, which I think is really important to begin to get students interested and knowing that there are choices out there like this. And then the other thing that I like that you're doing, and I'd just like you to talk about a little, and several of you said that you have credit-based programs and degree-based programs embedded right in an apprenticeship. My own personal feeling is I think if you're a guidance counselor or a parent, that makes it more attractive. There's a certificate, there's something that is marketable, there's something that you can take, and it's obviously beneficial for the student. But I guess I'd like you to speak to that just a little. Do you see that? I mean, do you think that the ability to earn an associate's degree, the ability for a company to partner with a community college or another organization to provide that kind of opportunity, does that increase the attractiveness of apprenticeship programs?
100%. Students today are very well informed, and they are very assertive about maximizing their return on investment as well, the investment of their time and their energy. And no parent wants to think that their child's choices are going to limit them in any way, or that they are going to send them down a path where there's just a sort of a dead end. That's one of the challenges that apprenticeship and two-year college education, frankly, has had to work to overcome. It's not a stopping point. It can be the beginning point, it can be the middle point of your career, it can be something that you're doing toward the end of your career in order to upskill. So it makes a huge difference to get as much out of that time and investment of their energy as possible, and that includes academic credential, workplace certifications, apprenticeship credentials. As much as we can pack in simultaneously, we're going to do. And it's actually quite critical for some of these new industries that actually require you to have some kind of academic credential before you can sit for your licensing exam, for example.
Right. Well, I think it's wonderful that you're doing that. I do want to just confirm, Ms. Noteboom, what you had said in regards to sometimes the approval process makes it difficult for a company to start a new apprenticeship program, and we should do everything that we can to prevent that. I think that is a barrier to some students having that pathway to a career. I've experienced that personally as well. In Pennsylvania, we had difficulty getting a new apprenticeship program approved. In fact, weren't able to do that. And so, as we're considering reauthorizing this particular program, we should be thinking and ensuring that we're finding ways to make it easier for people to participate. One other thing I want to mention, I have just another minute. Several of you have talked about competency-based programs. you're doing that in your organization. I think Mr. Castillo, you talked about that. Ms. Robinson, you talked about that. And I know you answered some questions, but I'd like to hear just a little bit more, maybe Ms. Robinson, I'll ask you a little bit more about what that means. What is a competency-based program in your particular state?
Sure. So our Maryland Apprenticeship Training and Council meets 4 times a year, sometimes more often, and provides a lot of technical assistance with our sponsors, businesses, partners in the interim. When we are talking with businesses and they're a little bit shy about creating an apprenticeship program, we will walk them through the types of programs that have worked and can work. And oftentimes in areas like cyber, we find that employers are looking for specific skills to be attained along the way, progressive skills. They need to see that you have mastered a certain set of skills before an apprentice has moved on to the next set. Unlike some more traditional trade time-based programs that the industry has determined that, a 2, 3, 4 year period of time is significant and appropriate for that industry. We do believe that the industry should be making these determinations. But when a non-traditional industry comes to us or is leaning towards being interested, and we can offer them the options of time-based, competency-based, or a hybrid, they are more willing to come to the table with a proposal. Mm-hmm. And to your point about the time frame for approval, I would say that state programs have the ability to be a little bit more nimble. So we can work with those partners, help them compare different types of programs and show them standards that have been approved, get lots of businesses on board to say, yes, this is the type of competency, progressive skills we'd want to see, and then they can get a program approved very quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, and it's now my time. I can want to give myself 5 minutes and to really initially thank you, and we'll sum up in just a few minutes. Ms. Noteboom, I know you mentioned San Diego, and I will follow up with that. So we'll work on that issue. I wanted to just go back for a second. Several of my colleagues, and I must say, they pretty much asked all the questions that particularly I wanted to delve into, but speaking particularly of the fact that women have tended to be, when they've been enrolled in apprenticeships, it's usually been at a lower pay scale. And so we need to move forward with that, and certainly at IBM, Ms. Noteboom, I mean, there's been a dramatic change, and I wanted to just mention that we want to continue to work on that so that we're really talking about equitable access and certainly diversity as we move forward. One of the issues is around alignment with the K-12 system, and the fact that in order for students to be able to even think about these possibilities, we need counselors as well who are able to translate that experience for them, and that means that they have to be exposed as well. I wondered if you've seen any examples of that we might learn from as we move forward. How can we better really help our counselors and help them to understand how valued they can be in this process as we change culture, as we change ideas about this?
I'd like to speak to this because I think it was a problem that Wisconsin struggled with for many years. And we've just taken the same approach with counselors and parents as we do with students, which is exposure, information, education about the options and the opportunities that result from those options. So lots more information about what kinds of apprenticeships are out there, how much money you can make, what kind of companies employ apprentices. Some of our namesake companies, Harley-Davidson, Snap-on, big institutions in our state. But also, I think, getting them on site. So we have things called heavy metal tours and STEM Day and, girls in the trades. We bring the students, but we also bring their teachers and their counselors onto our campuses and into our businesses and show them what the work is.
Do you have in Wisconsin and perhaps in Maryland as well, directories? So not unlike what we have for college, university directories to give students information. They can go online, they can search, they can do. How has that developed in Wisconsin, and how helpful has that been?
I think online is very important. A lot of young people especially, that's where they live. But there is no substitute for seeing for yourself the reality. And their counselors and their parents are not online as much as young people are. So if you want to reach them, you got to use a lot of different formats.
Maybe a directory helps, but it's not a substitute for that.
Not the silver bullet.
Yeah, I think the other issue, and Ms. Dunbar and Mr. Bastillo as well, I mean, one of the issues that we talk about of why this can be successful is because you have personnel at the businesses that are there to support and to educate, really, to share their experiences, which can be something similar to the young person that they're working with. But is there a training program? Ms. Fox may say educating program, in the businesses themselves to help people be mentors, because it's not a natural for everybody. Some people are just very good at it, but you can be terrific at what you do, but not be able to teach it in the same way. How do you do that?
I think we have an excellent ability at IBM to showcase our careers, because we have the ability to have so many at our company. And what's awesome is our IBMers are often going out to their communities and showcasing what they do for a living. Many times at the middle school level, or we have camps where we bring middle schoolers in. We also do it at the high school level very regularly. And one of the coolest things that we actually showcase to them, coupling on what you had said, Dr. Foy, earlier, is we have externally recognized badges that we give throughout the apprenticeship program that can be used for any opportunity the individual wants after the apprenticeship.
Good to hear. Thank you so much. Are you all confident that you already have been able to have a cultural shift in this area? How far does it go? What is it going to do? Is it going to change our economy the way a lot of us think it has the possibility to do? Anybody want to? Oh, my time is up, but maybe we'll.
I think this enables America to close the skills gap. It's opening up a huge pathway to employment.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, and now we're going to turn to Ms. Wild from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And because I'm interested in any answers that the rest of you might give to the question that my colleague and the chair just asked, I would first open it up to any of you who want to add to that.
Sure, thank you. So I'll start with the mentorship component first. Very critical in healthcare. When we started doing this work, we realized that that was a huge hole, did not exist. There's preceptorship, it's similar. So we created a variety of resources, open source resources, training. That is a huge component of a successful program and model. And you're right, just because you're a good healthcare worker doesn't mean you're a good mentor. Right? So that is extremely important. I think this clearly is something that we're invested in because we do see the potential impact that it has on our communities around the country. I think we're at the beginning stages of this process with non-traditional industries, but I do see that there is a huge potential here.
Ms. Robinson or Dr. Foy, any comment on whether we can have a cultural shift in this direction?
I would think we already are seeing that cultural shift, and we hope to see that grow, especially in light of some of this new language. In terms of the mentoring question, I agree with my panelists. I think that if we open up that opportunity, some of our most successful school systems in Maryland are the ones where we have, it only takes one teacher, to be quite honest, who is very invested in this program and who sees the benefit, who is willing to schedule the trips and connect with the employers and let those students see what is available to them. We would have employers stepping up to the plate to be mentors immediately. So I look forward to that continued cultural shift.
Thank you. Because I want to make sure I get to my question, I'm going to end that there. I am one of the 214 lawyers in Congress, and I dare say that Mr. Norcross's skills as an electrician are far more in demand than mine are on a daily basis for most people in this country. I do think that this is an incredibly important topic, and it's why, even though I'm not part of this subcommittee, I opted to come and stay for the questions and answers. My biggest concern at least in my district, which is Pennsylvania 7, the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, is that we don't seem to be doing enough to get word out to the people who could most benefit from apprenticeships in terms of recruiting them, in terms of making them aware of what programs are out there. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Bustillo, if we could start with you, and did I mispronounce your name? Is it Bustillo? Bustillo. Okay. What outreach strategies have you found are the most successful in recruiting people to apply for apprenticeships, particularly people in low-income or underserved areas who would be a good fit for these programs, perhaps, but are just unaware of them?
So I think for us, it's really about leveraging the pre-existing infrastructure we have in terms of labor management partnerships to connect directly with religious institutions, community-based organizations, employers as well, because frankly, most healthcare systems are based in communities. So we have worked directly to leverage that infrastructure to get notice out.
Okay. Anybody else on that? And also, if you want to expand, any of you, to include how we recruit experienced workers who might want or need to change industries because of changing demands for a new phase in their career. And let me just say, labor is a very strong base in my area. They wholeheartedly admit that they aren't particularly effective at marketing their programs, and without putting the burden on them, I just kind of want to figure out how we bring more of this to our underserved communities.
I'd like to expand on what Dr. Foy said earlier. I think she said it really well. We as employers need to be partnering with educators to really make very clear the necessary skills to be first in line for jobs. Because, the educators are working with, children and young adults regularly, and so that partnership is absolutely critical. And we've shown that with our P-TECH model.
Dr. Foy?
I think it's just getting the word out and talking about it. Congress talking about it, employers talking about it, we have to talk about it. There is no single actual piece of information that has been more powerful in my communications than those compensation numbers. And the fact that financial aid or student debt is a huge problem right now. I think it's the number one reason why people think that anything after high school is not going to be for them. That's zero when you're talking about an apprenticeship or a learn-to-earn program.
We probably need to educate some of our parents, too, about passing this on to their children. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you very much. And I now recognize the distinguished ranking member for his closing statement. Oh, before that, I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention that members may have some additional questions of you, and we ask the witnesses to please respond to those questions in writing, and the hearing record will be held open for 14 days in order to receive those responses. There are a few other things in the boilerplate here, but I think we're going to go ahead and ask the ranking member to please give his closing statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a great hearing. I do want to just follow up before a statement, talk about the exposure. It reminded me of a program in my area that works extremely well. They call it an externship. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but essentially bringing students and guidance counselors into one of the large employers in my area. It might be a factory floor, it might be something else, and they spend a few days there. And literally immerse themselves and experience the kind of work that's available there. And that has been really an effective program in having guidance counselors and teachers understand the opportunities that are there. So it's been great. But again, I just want to thank each of you for the work that you're doing, for taking the time to share your experiences and your perspectives and expertise here today. It's been a great conversation and really, really important. We all know the importance of the opportunity this provides for students and families, and for employers. And so, again, I want to thank you. It's about encouraging a mindset of lifelong learning, where individuals are continually attaining new skills that allow them to be competitive in today's marketplace. So I do appreciate, I got into a little bit of discussion about the competency-based approach, which I think is absolutely outstanding. And I think it's important, I think, Ms. Robinson, you mentioned it's important to develop those competencies in partnership with the employers who are going to be hiring the apprentice or working with the apprentice in jobs in their locations. And I also want to mention again, it's important to keep apprenticeships programs flexible enough, particularly to work for our small and medium-sized businesses. And I really believe if we want to encourage the growth of apprenticeship program in the country, we cannot close doors to those who want to participate by creating a system that is too difficult to navigate, and I've experienced that personally myself. So I'm really happy for the productive conversation today about how to improve the system. I look forward to continuing the discussion so that we can get to a place where we can all proudly support a bill that we can see signed into law. So thank you again, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ranking Chair. Thank you all very much for being here. It's now time to give my closing statement. It's going to be very brief, and I wanted to thank you again because many of, I think, the ideas that we've had and we know are sort of out there, but we're not exactly sure how they've been applied or what the issues, what the challenges have been. You were able to address those very well, and I greatly appreciate that, and we'll look to you for guidance, for your wisdom as we move forward. And I want to thank the ranking member for also saying how I think we are very ready to go forward with this and to move through any of the issues that still remain, but I'm very excited about it personally, and I hope that we can do that. I think we certainly were able to reaffirm today that the registered apprenticeship system is one of the best strategies we have for offering Americans across the country a clear pathway to the middle class. And we recognize that we have a chance to put aside whatever differences there are, work together to help more Americans succeed in our economy by scaling up registered apprenticeships. Our discussion has been on the National Apprenticeship Act, of course, of 2020 that we're looking to authorize, and this really has brought us one step closer, I think, to that goal. And at the core of the provisions is the proposal that will expand apprenticeship opportunities through historic federal and state investment and allow employers to more easily take part in the registered apprenticeship system. I think it is our hope and our wish that the investment in that at all levels, whether it's businesses, whether it's the federal government, also the state, because they play a very important role as well, that their investment will be worthwhile and actually pay for itself. So we're looking forward to that day and continuing our discussion with our colleagues, with stakeholders, shaping a reauthorization of the National Apprentice Act that gives everyone a chance at achieving the American dream. Thank you again so much for being here, for traveling, and helping to really explain this to all of us. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.